Hello, the next aspect of Module 4 is the resource tutorial for the instructional shifts with Google Classroom. And when I think about the use of Google Classroom and how we can see instructional shifts, how we can change our pedagogy, how we can change our teaching, really there are a lot of possibilities here. And I'm going to take more of a broad view here with the idea that in our assignment for this Module 4 resource tutorial activity, you will be actually sharing how you see an instructional shift in your classroom. So when we think about instructional shifts, just from the start, when I think of ideas of how Google Classroom can do things that I couldn't previously do, I'm thinking about maybe hosting discussions in the stream. I know I can do that in the classroom, but thinking asynchronous versus synchronous discussions, Google Classroom can facilitate that and does really do create a new dimension for students to participate in class, even if they aren't doing it face to face. Another instructional shift or idea that you could consider is the use of mobile devices to put the students back in the driver's seat. So if you have not tried the mobile app for Google Classroom, I encourage you to do so. I don't know if you can create a fake account that you can use as a test account, or maybe you can find a trusted student and see how it looks from their end. But using the mobile device and thinking of ways that students can now demonstrate and show their learning that isn't necessarily a paragraph reflection. Maybe it's a 30-second video reflection, or maybe they're using their mobile app to find images that demonstrate their understanding for a specific concept. The ability to use the mobile app to take their learning with them and to submit their learning via the mobile app really is a game changer that in the past, I don't think that without the mobile app and smartphone, we really didn't have that possibility. And you think of your students that are extremely busy, and I'm thinking maybe more secondary here, that might be a game changer for them to ramp up their contributions to class. So I definitely would ask that you consider the mobile device, the use of mobile devices in the mobile app to maybe support their learning in your class. And I guess the last question, maybe this should be the first question, how will you change the way that you teach? I ask everyone in this course to reflect on what you do in a typical unit. Now think about what elements you could easily push through Google Classroom so you could spend more time working on some of the higher order thinking skills in the physical classroom. Think about all those things that bog down our 45, 90-minute class period that are essential to a lesson, but maybe take a little more time than you had wished. And then maybe once we get those on Google Classroom, students can go through those on their own. Then in the physical classroom, we can be working on higher order thinking and answering some of the big questions. Some other instructional shifts to consider, the blended flipped learning model. Your big challenge is shifting that lower level thinking content onto Google Classroom so you can do higher level thinking during face-to-face, kind of that last idea right here as well. One idea to maybe do that is using like Edpuzzle for content introduction. In Edpuzzle, you can do ongoing checks for understanding, you can do formative assessments, and then maybe the Edpuzzle leads students to a big question to answer, but that big question or questions the students have to answer would be in class. And one way to facilitate this, all resources are attached to the Edpuzzle introduction via Google Classroom. Edpuzzle has an easy share to classroom feature. It's about building more content, so that's adding extra work, so that would be a con. But the pro is, again, shifting that stuff that you do in class that takes up your precious class time and shifting it to Google Classroom so you can use your precious class time for meaningful, relevant, higher order thinking activities and discussions. There are more pros and cons though, so I'm kind of interested to see what your pros or cons would be if you do consider this to be something that you want to integrate. Another approach that we could do is problem-based or project-based learning, as those work hand in hand. So when you want to address certain standards, how will you address those? And then how could Google Classroom help facilitate this learning? So if you think about the elements of a project-based learning, um, uh, uh, project-based learning, so you integrate that in the classroom and you have these ideas as a part of it. Now think about how Google Classroom can facilitate some of these ideas. I think we are touching on a lot of these ideas as we use Google Classroom, and especially, the feedback feature and the revision feature. So Google Classroom with the ability to pass assignments back and forth and to provide meaningful feedback and ongoing feedback, I think that really is, that points to how Google Classroom can support that. And even with this, for problem-based or project-based learning, maybe you're doing a 20% time or a Genius Hour, or you want to personalize learning. I always thought maybe creating an extra Google Classroom course for those students that really want to be challenged. They want to learn more about a specific topic, maybe of their choice or a choice of yours because it fits into the curriculum, but you just don't have time to teach it. So I think, perhaps creating that extra course and then inviting those students to it and focusing more on the learning rather than the grade, because it is an extension of what you're doing in the classroom and in your classes. I really think that there's some power to that, and that could be a really meaningful learning experience for your students. Getting ideas for students. Maybe you start with curiosity or curious, depending on the grade level, and you can build your content from there. Get that essential question or get that wondering from one of these sites, one of these curiosities that our students have them choose it, and then build your content from there, or have the students build their content from there. If there are other ideas, these are just scratching the surface, obviously. I'm going to hear them from you on this week's activity, and that activity is going to be right here, the assignment. What I'm asking you to do is to take a box and share an example of an instructional shift you will make and how Google Classroom will help you make that instructional shift. I want you to be detailed in what you plan to do, because I've learned from this course and other courses that the best way to learn from each other is to actually see specific application in the classroom. And so while mine is, an example and it doesn't have a lot of content per se, maybe you use this format to show how you plan to make an instructional shift in your classroom. So if you'd like to get to this document, here's the link to it. Everyone is an editor. And also when you get to the document, which this is the power of Google Docs, as we all know, say for example, there's something that a cohort member pointed out that you really, really like, simply highlight it and add a comment. So we can have comments on our document and we can start giving each other feedback and, asking more questions of each other based on what we plan to do. That's not a requirement necessarily, adding a comment, but it is nice to see that, and that shows that you are showing your commitment to pushing the envelope in your own classroom. This assignment is graded and is due Sunday by 11:55 p.m. or midnight, and I look forward to seeing what you have to offer. Thanks.